Draft Surrey Structural Changes Order 2026.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Usual House rules apply. Phones switched off, please. No hot drinks in the committee room, and if anybody feels spring has arrived and is bold enough to want to take their jackets off, you may do so. Minister to move motion, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure, as ever, to serve under your chairship. I'm today asking the committee to consider the draft Surrey Structural Changes Order 2026. This order was laid before this House on the 14th of January, and if approved in this House and the other place, it will implement a proposal submitted by Elmbridge Borough Council, Mole Valley District Council and Surrey County Council for two new unitary councils, East Surrey Council and West Surrey Council, on a geography covering the entirety of the county of Surrey. As I've said in this House before, we need to set local authorities on a clear path to financial sustainability. Local government reorganisation is a vital part of this journey. Having layers of councils is both ineffective and inefficient. Reorganisation is not a bureaucratic exercise or tinkering with lines on a map. With one council in charge in each area, we'll see quicker decisions to grow our towns and cities and reconnect people to opportunity. Residents will see more preventative care and will benefit from more financially stable councils with combined services delivering for a larger population, providing efficiencies and better value. That's why reorganisation is a vital part of our change. Stronger local councils equipped to generate economic growth, improve public services and empower communities. And I would like to thank colleagues in this place and councils across the country for working with the government on this process. To that end, on 5th of February 2025, councils in the 21 areas of England that still have two-tier local government, including Surrey, were invited to submit proposals for unitarisation. Two proposals for reorganisation in Surrey were taken to consultation, one for two unitary councils and one for three. Following the close of the consultation on the 28th of October 2025, I announced the Secretary of State's decision to implement, subject to parliamentary approval, the two unitary proposal. In reaching this decision, we consider the proposals carefully against the criteria set out in the invitation letter, alongside the responses to the consultation, all representations and all other relevant information. In our judgment, although both proposals met the criteria, the proposal for two unitaries better met the criteria in the case of Surrey. In particular, we believe it performed better against the second criterion, as it's more likely to be financially sustainable. Putting Surrey's local authorities on a more sustainable footing is vital to safeguarding the services its residents rely on, as well as investing in their futures. If Parliament approves this order, from the 1st of April 2027, there will be two unitary councils for Surrey. To deliver the new unitary councils in May 2026, the order requires elections to be held for the new East Surrey Council and West Surrey Council, which will assume their full powers on the 1st of April 2027. These elections will replace the scheduled county council and some district council elections. The elections will be on the basis of East Surrey having 36 two-member wards and West Surrey having 45 two-member wards. Subsequent elections to the unitary councils will be in 2031 and every 4 years thereafter. We expect the Local Government Boundary Commission for England to review the wards in time for the 2031 elections. Implementing this proposal and establishing these new unitary authorities will help with our vision. Stronger local councils in charge of all local services and controlling local economic powers to improve local public services and help grow economies. Before I outline the content of the draft order, I would like to bring attention to related issues in Surrey, being the level of unsupported debt in Woking and devolution for Surrey. On Woking's debt, the government recognises that Woking Borough Council holds significant and exceptional unsupported debt that cannot be managed locally in its entirety. We have committed to unprecedented debt repayment support of £500 million for Woking Council, reflecting historic capital practices at the council and the value for money case for acting to protect local and national taxpayers. This is a first tranche of support, and we will continue to explore what further debt support is required at a later point, including following greater certainty on the rationalisation of assets in Woking. Any support will need to consider what further action can be taken locally to reduce debt and value for money for the national and local taxpayer. We're committed to providing the new unitary with interim financial support, for example capitalisation support, until this process is complete. And on devolution for Surrey, there is a plan we're taking forward. On the 12th of February, we set out our intention to deliver a new wave of foundational strategic authorities across England as a next step forward in the government's devolution agenda. In Surrey, the government is working with partners, which will include the new unitary authorities, to establish a foundation strategic authority for the area. This will ensure that relevant functions held at the county level can continue to be delivered on that geographic footprint where possible, such as transport and adult skills. We've also proposed that a spatial development strategy should be produced over the Surrey geography, which would be a function held by the Foundation Strategic Authority. The establishment of a strategic authority will be subject to the relevant statutory tests being met and local consent. The government will also ensure fire and rescue functions continue to be governed on the same geography. Now turning to the content of the order, we have prepared it, having considered the information in the proposals and the representations invited from all the councils concerned on specific matters. That order provides that on the 1st of April 2027, the County of Surrey and the districts of Elmbridge, Epsom and Ewell, Guildford, Mole Valley, Reigate and Banstead, Runnymede, Spelthorne, Surrey Heath, Tandridge, Waverley and Woking are abolished. The councils of those districts and county will be wound up and dissolved. In their place, the functions will be transferred to the two new unitary authorities, East Surrey Council and West Surrey Council. The order also covers electoral matters, which I set out, and provides for appropriate transitional arrangements. On transitional arrangements, I'll just finish the point I'm making. On transitional arrangements, this order will place a duty on the existing councils to cooperate with each other and the shadow authority and the shadow executives. It places a duty on existing councils to create joint committees for East Surrey and West Surrey, which will be dissolved after the first meeting of their respective shadow authorities.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful to the Minister for giving way earlier, and then turning to the point she's just making. She referenced £500 million of debt repayment support off the back of Woking's unsupported debt, which rings a bell with me because I'm neighbouring an authority that has £500 million of debt, which is Blackpool, whilst being in Fylde Borough Council, which carries no debt. So how much does the government think this debt support payments they're going to have to make as they go through other areas, and have they budgeted an amount for that as they go through the other councils that are going through this process? And secondly, will that debt be paid off before the new authority is created, or will it be transferred to the new authorities?
Minister.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the Honourable Gentleman for his question, which is very important, because dealing with the significant debt that local authorities have built up for a range of reasons is extremely important. He'll be aware that, of course, we've dealt with the SEND issue in recent days. In relation to the point as he raises it in the context of reorganisation, those decisions will be taken on a case-by-case basis. It's a very important issue to get right, and I'll look forward to discussing the details of the case that he mentions with him, I'm sure on many occasions as we move forward with Lancashire reorganisation. I'm pleased that Surrey leaders, members and officers have already commenced and implemented on a voluntary basis some of the transitional arrangements in this order to support delivery of the two new unitary councils. As such, the required joint committees have been set up and the implementation team agreed, and work is underway on the required implementation plan. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the Surrey councils and everyone involved in this process for their continued hard work and collaboration for local government reorganisation in Surrey. I know that this is not easy, and I would like to reiterate my commitment to continued support to the councils through this process. As part of that, we have confirmed £63 million in new funding for all the 21 areas, including Surrey, going through reorganisation to help make this change. In conclusion, through this order, we're seeking to replace the existing local government structures in Surrey with two new unitary councils that will be financially sustainable and able to deliver high-quality public services to residents, and I commend this order to the committee.
Yeah. The question is that the committee has considered the draft Surrey Structural Changes Order 2026. Opposition front bench, David Simmons.
Sir Roger, a pleasure to serve with you in the chair this afternoon. I'm sure we all recognise that when the annals of history record the proceedings of Committee Room 11 at the House of Commons, they will note that this was the afternoon when Surrey died, not with a bang, but with a whimper inside that very committee room. But we're all here to abolish Surrey. There may be some in the room who felt a great enthusiasm to do that many, many years ago. But I think it's positive that we are here with what has for a long time been a locally led proposal for reorganisation. But I do have some questions, Mr. Roger, which I need to put to the Minister, although I'll be clear at this point that because this is a locally led proposal and because it does deliver benefits in the views of those local leaders, as the opposition we will not be opposing the statutory instrument this afternoon. It clearly is disappointing that of the 31 local authority areas that had their elections cancelled, we have only Surrey and its districts proceeding with local government reorganisation today. And that although this order is very much focused on the reorganisation of the existing local authorities, there is no clarity whatsoever about the promised mayor and the responsibilities that that mayor would have, how those will interact with these new authorities. And indeed, I've heard very clearly the frustration of many of those local leaders that the overall package, whilst acceptable, falls well short of the minimum that they were led to expect as a result of wider English local government reorganisation. So I hope the Minister will address these points in her response. She touched on the government's proposals around the SEND deficits. And we know Surrey, being a very large county with a high population of children with special educational needs and disabilities, carries a deficit in total, or a debt in total, sorry, not a deficit, of around £350 million. And the government set out proposals to the House a short time ago that they would be seeking to pay off 90% of those SEND deficits. Now, thus far, Surrey have been offered £100 million against a £350 million deficit. Now, clearly, that would bake in a structural problem of £250 million for the new successor authorities, as well as being very substantially less than the 90% that was promised and that was laid before the House. So it would be helpful if the Minister could set out what discussions and agreements she may have reached with her fellow ministers in the Department for Education, given that that is one of the most critical financial challenges that will face these new authorities. And whilst we recognise that this specifically is about Surrey, we know that it would be helpful, I think, for all of us to understand, given that it sits as part of that wider devolution priority programme, how close any other local authority areas are to signing the agreements which underpin the statutory instrument that is before the House today. Because it would be helpful to get a sense of, are we going to see a situation where Surrey is the only one that goes through this reorganisation process? And despite the relentless pressure placed on a number of those other areas, we've already seen some of those leaders, particularly in response to what's been said about elections cancellation, withdrawing their local authorities entirely from engagement with this programme. So is this going to be the sole reorganisation of the programme, or is this the first of many? And if it is the first of many, when might we see some of those others? It will be helpful, I think, to the committee this afternoon to understand what guidance the department is providing, again in that spirit of financial sustainability that the Minister spoke of, around the new higher value property tax. And we know that Surrey is one of the areas with a higher proportion of properties that falls for consideration within that. We know that that is a treasury tax. It has no benefit to the local authority which collects it. But it will be helpful to understand what guidance, if any, the department is providing to those local authorities as they engage on this very quick process of getting set up, so that they understand what it is they need to be saying to those households, what the process will be, how appeals will be handled, so they understand what their duties and responsibilities are. So what guidance has been provided around the higher value property tax? And then, final question, Mr. Roger. The Minister spoke about the additional £63 million which was announced to assist various local authorities across the country. Now, whilst we know that that was very substantially less than they were promised they would receive as part of this, it would be helpful to know what, if any, guidance has been issued as to what the purpose of that funding is. Because it seems very similar to the amount those councils whose elections were to be cancelled would have spent on organising and running the elections in their local areas. And clearly many of those leaders will want to know, is this additional funding that they can deploy towards reorganisation, or is this simply the usual electoral grant that is provided for the running of elections that previously were going to be cancelled in those areas. So, Sir Roger, I think in summary, the opposition is not going to push for a division on this. We recognise that this is the will of elected leaders in Surrey and is very much in the spirit of our own approach to devolution. I think what I do have to say to the Minister, though, is as we come here with the only one of those authorities announced in that devolution priority programme being before us today, with so many areas of our country feeling so let down, that this falls very far short of what was promised even to Surrey, never mind to the rest of our local leaders. And it will be helpful to have a clear assurance and a timeline about how the government proposes to remedy.
As is custom and practice, I shall call the Minister to respond at the end of the debate. Bear in mind that members may intervene more than once and on any occasion. I just see, are there any members on the government benches who wish to contribute? No, that's fine. Right. Liberal Democrat front bench, please. Zoe Franklin.
Thank you, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I thank the Minister for her introductory remarks, and I would like to echo her thanks to all across Surrey who have been involved in the transitional work, whether officers or elected members. We, the Liberal Democrats, recognise that local government reorganisation is needed to make it easier for people to interact with their councils. How many of us have listened to the understandable frustration of residents wanting to complain again about the bin collections and the potholes, only to find they have two separate councils to contact? But it is also, more seriously, the only realistic way to address the significant financial issues that councils across the country face after years of Conservative underfunding of local government. Nowhere is the difficult reality of council finances clearer than in Surrey, where previous Conservative administrations presided over Woking reaching 2.5 billion of debt and Spelthorne 105 billion. So we understand. I will give way.
Forgive me, but we have to point out the Liberal Democrats were part of a coalition in 2010 that started austerity.
I thank the Honourable Member for his intervention, but I was referencing specifically in that instance the debt of Woking and Spelthorne, which was under Conservative administrations. So as I was saying, we understand why the government decided to push Surrey to go first with reorganisation. However, we and local government colleagues in Surrey are deeply concerned by the speed at which this process has been pushed through and the lack of meaningful consultation with residents. The decision to push ahead with a two-council model has been taken in spite of residents quite clearly saying in response to a survey they would prefer a three-council model, and the district councils setting out clearly that it would not be significantly more expensive to go for a three-council model and could in fact better represent communities and place. Local government reorganisation and devolution should be about strengthening local communities, just as I know this government wants and was set out very clearly when it was originally announced by the Honourable Member for Ashton-under-Lyne. And yet, the decision for two councils and double speed processes seems to be more about central cost savings than the people of Surrey, I'm afraid to say. But of course, central cost savings are not enough to rebalance Surrey's finances. Even with an unprecedented bailout for Woking, which we are grateful, and I'm sure my honourable friend, the member for Woking, will mention it in his remarks, the new West Surrey Council, created by this structural change order, is likely to start life with somewhere between 3 and 4.5 billion of unresolved debt, not to mention a potentially significant structural funding gap. And of course, East Surrey may face lower unresolved debt, but will equally have a significant potential funding gap. And of course, who pays the price ultimately for this? It is residents, both in terms of council tax and potentially the services they receive. I really want to emphasise that it is vital the government provides sustained and adequate funding to ensure reorganisation strengthens councils, not destabilises them. So turning specifically to the structural order itself. Although Surrey's reorganisation is the first in this government's devolution programme, it is not the first county to ever go through this process. And what is interesting is that the government has diverged from the precedent set in previous examples, such as Cheshire and Cumbria. In view of this, I'm interested to hear from the Minister. To what extent did her department consider previous LGR precedents, e.g. Cheshire and Cumbria, when designing the Surrey Joint Committee model, and what specific factors led them to diverge from those precedents, or was the decision primarily shaped by central government's evolving policy around reorganisation? Moving on to the formation of the two new councils, I'm sure the Minister will agree that clear vision-led leadership that puts local people first and seeks to work collaboratively and effectively with officers and political leaders involved in the creation of those authorities is absolutely crucial to smooth transition. Article 15 of the SCO requires the formation of an implementation team led by the County Council's Chief Executive. Can the Minister advise what statutory or practical considerations led to the decision that this leadership must sit with the County Council Chief Executive rather than neutral or jointly appointed lead? What representations did the Minister's department seek from councils across Surrey to shape their thinking? And can this information please be shared with Surrey MPs and existing council leaderships? I'm also interested in to understand from the Minister, were there specific risks that the department was seeking to mitigate by mandating county-level leadership for the implementation team, particularly given the scale of service disaggregation required? While reorganisation in Surrey is designed to create single-tier local government through the formation of these two East and West Surrey councils, I am very glad that the SCO allows the retention of parish councils. As the MP for Guildford, I have seen the very clear benefit of this hyper-local tier of local councils that provides passionate, publicly accountable community leadership and they are delivering high-quality services and innovative ideas alongside local people. It's therefore been disappointing that, as far as I know, there's been very limited assistance from MHCLG around the formation of new town and parish councils to cover the areas that do not already have them. And yes, I do understand that the SCO makes provision for community boards, but I am sceptical that these will provide the similar level of community benefit or accountability that parish or town councils do. So I'm very interested to hear the Minister's views on this. Speaking of accountability, I wonder if the Minister can provide some clarity regarding council vacancies that arise after the 30th of September this year. My reading of the SCO is no by-elections can take place after this date unless the number of councillors on the district or county they're a member of drops below a third of the total number of councillors. So, for example, in Guildford, this would be 16 councillors. Given the new councils do not form formally until the 1st of April 27, surely, if significant numbers of vacancies arise, this actually leaves residents technically without full representation. And does the Minister believe that this, therefore, is democratically appropriate? And before I close, I have two last queries to raise with the Minister. Firstly, could she set out the timeline of the remaining steps for this structural change order to formally come into place, including the date that she expects it to come into force? And secondly, and I do recognise this is something the Minister may wish to take away and write back to me on, but can she advise what considerations have been made to reviewing the Surrey Act of 1985 in light of the changes taking place through the SCO and the associated reorganisation of Surrey into East and West Surrey? In conclusion, we on these benches recognise the need for reorganisation. We do not oppose the order, but we urge the Minister and her department to ensure that they work closely with colleagues and officers across all tiers of local government in Surrey to ensure they have the funding and transition support needed to ensure local people see improvements to services where they are needed, council setups that put the needs of residents at the centre in both culture and service delivery, and that they are financially resilient for the future. Thank you, Sir Roger.
Lewis Carroll. Thank you, Sir Roger, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. When creating new unitary councils, it's really important we take communities with us, and that community identity is really important. And I've raised concerns over this whole devolution and unitarisation process about how we take all of the communities within the Shire councils across the country with us, and in particular reference to Surrey. Could I ask the Minister, when she sums up, if she could just reflect on a comment that was made in the Chamber by my honourable friend, the member for Spelthorne's cause, to name the new proposed unitary authority covering his constituency, West Surrey and South Middlesex, rather than just simply West Surrey, to ensure that we get that historic county representation and we take communities with us. I will give way.
I'm very grateful, and I'll be very brief, Sir Roger, in my intervention. My honourable friend highlights rightly the campaigned by my honourable and gallant friend, the member for Spelthorne, for the new council to be named as West Surrey and South Middlesex. And as I understand it, this is something also championed by, and this shows my age, popular household name Russell Grant as well. So would my honourable friend agree with me that alongside absolutely the right questions we're debating here today about the financial sustainability of the new unitary authorities, their governance and the services they provide, it is absolutely vital that we also ensure in parallel with that they have a genuine relationship and sense of identity that their constituents, those who live in those areas, can relate to.
I thank my right honourable friend for that intervention. I completely agree. This is a fundamental flaw that I don't think the government has really given much time to look at in terms of how we take communities with us and how we get that identity right. And I'll just finish in summary by saying, look, the people of Spelthorne feel strongly about their historic ties to Middlesex, and I would urge the Minister to listen to those concerns, because creating big new super unitary councils does not make people feel included when there are a number of multiple areas shoved together in one big large authority, because no one wants to end up like Birmingham, and it's really important that we take communities with us.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Roger. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship this afternoon. I want to talk about why Surrey is the first local authority to go down this local government reorganisation under this new government and plan, and it's because of local catastrophic failures of Conservative councils. We have got Woking Borough Council, Surrey County Council, but a raft of others that have got significant issues. The Minister has already highlighted that the government has, in an unprecedented historic level, agreed write-off of £500 million for one local authority, Woking Borough Council. The government has never written off debt for one local authority on its own before, and yet they've done so in such a large style. They have also said that is going to be the first tranche in debt, unprecedented debt write-off. Moreover, the Minister has confirmed to me that the government will provide interim financial support to the new West Surrey Council, including capitalisation support, advice on commercial support, as well to deal with the historic legacy of assets. We had local authorities acting like bank and property empires rather than local authorities that should keep the streets clean and maintain our parks. So please can the Minister confirm to me and to reassure members here why this government is happy for a new council, West Surrey Council, to start off effectively bankrupt without having that government support? Why is this being done and ensuring that support is so needed? Currently, Spelthorne Council and Woking Council are in intervention with government government commissioners in post. Will those commissioners remain in situ after those councils are abolished? Will they be transferred to West Surrey Council? When will that decision be made if she can't make it today? Moving on to my second point, Sir Roger, which is about Chapter 3.46 and Chapter 4.48, about the cancelling of elections, particularly last year for Surrey County Council. The government has made a decision to reschedule elections that were previously going to be cancelled due to the potential unlawful nature of them. Can she confirm what advice she has had and the government has had on was cancelling Surrey County Council's elections last year also unlawful, before we make a decision today on formalising that? And finally, Schedule 1 and 2 is about the new wards for East Surrey Council and West Surrey Council. I believe those wards were established for Surrey County Council under the Local Government Boundary Commission for England, but were never implemented. Is that the case? The Minister said she assumes the Local Government Boundary Commission will review those wards before the next scheduled set of elections. Does she believe there is time for these new councils to establish themselves, to understand what council size is needed, then undertake an 18-month review? Does she genuinely believe there is enough time for them to do that? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Sir Roger, and can I just thank all of those members of Parliament who have contributed to this debate, and also to those members of Parliament, particularly Surrey members of Parliament, who've engaged with me on this subject in recent months. I really do appreciate their time and efforts. I'll try as best as I can to respond to the points that members have made, but as the member for Guildford rightly expressed, I may write to her and others with more detail, particularly where specific details of guidance or advice previously given or so on is requested. I think it's easier for everyone on the committee if I provide that directly to her. To turn to some of the queries from the member for Rice Northwood and Pinner, he mentions devolution, and I answered his question in my speech in that the next step is a foundational strategic authority. Today we're dealing with the reorganisation, and the government believes that it's the right thing to get the firm foundations of unitary authorities before we move forward. But we are determined nonetheless to move forward with devolution for England. He also asks about the send deficit, and I was slightly I was interested in what he said in terms of the specific figures. I don't believe that there are firm numbers confirmed yet. I'm in daily contact with DFE ministers and others about it, so I'm sure we can correspond on that. I can, if she really wants to. But I will happily correspond with any members who are interested about that subject, but nothing is confirmed yet, so let's try to make progress on that. It's very important for all local authorities. He asked me if this is going to be the sole reorganisation, and the answer to that is no. We're making progress on the next waves of reorganisation, and there'll be more for the government to say very shortly on that. He also asks for guidance on the high-value council tax new charge that we've introduced, and also on the 63 million extra in capability funding. We've been in consultation and collaboration with councils and the LGA on both of those things, as we have done throughout all of reorganisation, but I'll happily provide him with more detail of that if he would wish. Just to turn to the member for Guildford's queries, she asks about precedent from other reorganisations. Of course, we take into account what's happened previously. The criteria against which decisions are judged are those in the invitation letter, those that we set out. She also asks about the county council leadership, and I can write to her with details of that process if she would like. And she asks me some detailed questions about risks and also about the technicalities of vacancies and by-elections and so on, which again I'll write to her with the precise details of. The member for Broxbourne asks me about the name and our fellow members' campaign, and I would just say that following oral questions I will be engaging with the member concerned, so he need have no fear that we will be listening to his points. And finally, the member for Woking asks me about the situation, which he rightly describes as incredibly serious. For any council to have got into this position, I think is much more serious than actually it often is given attention. I will write to him with the details of the next steps on commissioners and so on. It affects the whole best value process, but I'll write to him on the background on that. He also asked me the specifics on cancelling elections last year, and I don't think there's any relevance, but I'll just write and confirm to him, because I think that he asked a specific point about advice and so on, so I'll write to him about that too. But if I might just say to members in Surrey through this committee that there are significant financial challenges here, and I don't underestimate how important it is to try to get that right, to make sure that services can continue to be delivered for residents. So I look forward to working together with Surrey members to get those decisions right, to make sure that we all get this process to the best place it can be. This government's ambition is, as I've said, to simplify local government by ending the two-tier system and establishing new single-tier unitary councils. It's a once-in-a-generation reform to make stronger local councils, empowered across local services and equipped to get economic growth going, improve services and empower communities. As I've said, this order provides for 2 new unitary councils in Surrey and will help ensure local government is financially sustainable and able to deliver for residents. These are the benefits this order is able to bestow on the people and businesses of Surrey, and I therefore beg to move that the committee has considered the order, and I commend this order to the committee.
Order. Just before I put the question, I have been discussing with my learned friend the situation that arises. The Honourable Lady has, as ever, entirely courteously indicated that she, and properly, that she's going to respond in writing to some of the questions that have been put. It is not my place to interfere with the process at all. However, while this order relates to Surrey, it's clear that there are potentially wider implications that might be of interest. And I gently suggest that if she chose to copy her letters in to, at the very least, the 2 front benches, that would probably be hugely appreciated.
May I, Sir Roger?
Absolutely.
So Roger, I think, as you might expect, I agree entirely with your suggestion, and I'd be very happy to do that.
As ever, courteous. Thank you very much indeed. The question is that the committee has considered the draft Surrey Structural Changes Order 2026. As many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Contrary, no? The ayes have it. Order.